fellow ink drinkers, and welcome back to the Blind Girls Book Talk podcast. My name is Aria.
And I'm Belle.
And we are two legally blind sisters who love reading and love books. And so what we've done is we've created this podcast in order to talk about it. We like to talk about what we love about books, what we wish we could change, and everything in between. This show is a variety show, so we cover a wide array of bookish content, and that can range from bad retellings of stories, book-to-movie adaptation comparisons, buddy reads, recent reads, bookish challenges. Really, the list does go on. And today what we're going to be doing, since we're getting close to the end of the year, is we're going to talk about reading goals and advice for busy readers. Now, I know that there have been many a times where I just have not been able to read a whole heck of a lot just because of busy schedules, being busy with work, just being too tired. So I know how difficult it can be. And because of that, personally, for a very long time, I had never set a reading goal of how many books that I was going to read within a year, just because I didn't want to set a goal and then not be able to reach it or get anywhere near it. So essentially, what we're going to do is Bella's going to talk about some ways that maybe you can sneak in some reading. I'm going to chime in with my advice, and then we'll kind of go from there. Take it away, Belle.
So, like Arya said, the biggest difference between me and her is that whenever she got busy, she stopped reading, especially when she was in college. She stopped reading when she was getting her undergrad degree because she just got too busy, and then it was just hard for her to kind of get back into it for a while. But for me, now that I am officially graduated, I never was like that. I still, while I was working on my degree, I still found time to read, even though I had a super busy schedule. So I found some tricks that helped to still be able to read while having a busy, hectic schedule, such as being a college student, trying to balance living on my own, my schoolwork, all my extracurriculars, and trying to have a social life all at the same time. I have found a couple things that I found work best for me. Granted, every person is different, but the one thing I found is I would try to schedule some time out of my day to read. It may have been while I was also doing something else. Like, I would read while I was making dinner, or while I was eating dinner, or I would read for 30 minutes before I went to bed. I'd always go to class early. Depending on how early I could get into the classroom, I'd read for those however long before my professor showed up. Granted, now if I had a test, I'd study for the test. But you kind of find ways to find that downtime where you could also do something else.
Right, and that's really the big thing when it comes to trying to read when you have a busy schedule, is carving out those little bit of times. Now, I will say another thing that did help me, again, is audiobooks, because you don't have to be physically reading. You can be cooking, you can be going for a walk or taking out the dog, any of the things, and you can have your audiobook on in your headphones or just on in the background and listening to it while you're doing whatever you need to do, and that does help as well. The other thing that I found helpful is honestly trying to read before bed. Now, I know that some people are, and I'm kind of the same way, so I don't do it quite as often, but the whole just one more chapter kind of thing.
Yeah.
Normally what I do to combat that is I'll maybe pick like 3 chapters or something, and I'll put my bookmark in at the 3rd chapter away, wherever it is in the book that I want to read to. And then I'll be reading, and as soon as I hit that bookmark, no matter what, I close the book. Like, it doesn't matter. You hit that bookmark, the bookmark means stop. I feel like for me, that definitely does help a little bit to kind of combat that. There are times where I'm just like, I could move the bookmark, but like, I know that if I do that, that I'm going to constantly do that. So I kind of have to keep that rule in my head. You hit the bookmark means stop.
See, I am not 100% like that. I personally never am able to follow through with that trick. But what I do is I will set like a 45 minute timer, and that's all I read for. Or in my case, because I have an overactive brain, at night, most of the time I'm tired, but my brain's too active. So I will just lay in bed staring until my brain finally is able to settle and I can sleep. So sometimes, I normally do it on weekends, but I will, kind of, or maybe some days that I'd have a later class, I would just kind of read until I felt my brain settle and focus enough on the book so I could just fall asleep. But if I didn't do that, then I would just set an alarm on my phone. And when that alarm went off, it was okay, we're done.
Right. That's definitely the other way to, do it, is setting a timer and being like, okay, I'm giving myself an hour. In an hour, do not pass go, do not collect $200. You are done reading for the night. And that's definitely another one.
Yes, that is definitely something that I have done. Another thing, I do not recommend doing this, but if you can do it, then go for it, because I do it. And that is, well, you should read when you commute if possible. Like if you're on a bus or some sort of public transportation, or somebody else is driving, as long as you are not behind the wheel of a vehicle yourself, then by all means read during that time if you can. For me, I don't drive or ride any public transportation anywhere, but I have learned since high school, I learned how to read and walk at the same time. But granted, I walk by counting my steps, so I always know where I am because I subconsciously count my steps. I've always done that. So, I'd never run into anything, and people normally stay out of my way.
Yeah, and that's how we're kind of opposite. You are definitely one who can have trouble reading in the car sometimes.
Yes.
Where that has never once bothered me. That is where I get a lot of good reading time, is in the car. You definitely have kind of since developed a bit of a motion sickness where you didn't necessarily used to have it, but you do now.
It's worse now.
Whereas I would never be able to read and walk at the same time. I don't have that coordination.
Yeah, and you kind of got to find what works for you. If you don't get motion sick and you can, read in the car, by all means, go ahead.
As long as you're not driving.
Yes, thank you, as long as you're not driving. But if you are like me and you know your surroundings, you have some sort of coordination, and you can do it, by all means. I find that, walking while reading has always worked for me.
If not, if you are driving, again, audiobooks.
Yes, there's still ways around that.
Right. If you don't have the coordination to walk and read at the same time, audiobooks.
Yes, and another important thing is that something that I personally struggled with, and Aria can attest to this, is that you play multiple parts in your life, and it's all a balancing act. So, right. Maybe some days you can't read, then just find time the next day.
Right. Yeah. And that's definitely something that I've kind of learned or worked on learning. And I think it's also helped me to, I guess, combat a reading slump in a way. I went through a years-long reading slump where I didn't read, and everything that I picked up to try to read, I did not finish. And and it wasn't until I found audiobooks that I was able to be like, oh, okay. And that kind of helped me to slowly get back. And then it wasn't until I think the end of last year that I really was kind of like, okay, I can read And then at the beginning of this year is when it really kind of picked up and I was able to read a lot of books at a time. And now it's kind of like one of those things where if I don't feel like reading, I'm okay with if I don't read one day, so be it. Like I can try the next day.
Yeah, because it's going to be the start of a new year soon. I know a lot of people's New Year's resolution is, to work out, lose weight, physical health and all that, but your mental health is also extremely important that everybody should work on. And so one of my struggles is playing those different parts. So like I have been so long focused on just playing the part of academic Belle. So like, I've had to kind of learn how to play the different parts I need to play and not just focus on that aspect.
Right. I've been trying to be a little bit more balanced of, okay, things that I need to get done. Now this is my time to, read. I know for me, a lot of times reading is very much a form of not only escapism, but just kind of a distraction tool for me, like more so than even like watching a movie or watching a TV show. I much prefer to just read something and it just kind of distracts me from, any sort of mental draining things, bad mental things. And it's something that has become very useful to me to try to break, spiraling thoughts and that kind of thing. So you find what works for you. And like Belle said, not everything is going to work for everybody. But again, these are just kind of some general things. And I know you have, I think, a few more.
Yes. Again, not all these things will work for everybody. Like for me, one thing that helps me be able to read so much is that I schedule out my day. Like hour by hour, every 30 minutes is accounted for and followed. I have to follow a strict set guideline. Aria, on the other hand, cannot do that.
No. I like schedules, don't get me wrong. It's just, for me, I know that most of the time when I have a schedule, something goes horribly awry and it just doesn't work out for me.
Yes, so, and for me, if that happens for me, then I spiral. So, like, I need that stability.
Right. Whereas me, I'm just kind of like, well, guess I'm not doing that today.
Yeah, you accept that. I do not.
And I've learned to have to roll with it.
Whereas for me, it's if somebody says, we're going to leave at this specific time, we leave at this specific time.
So, and I mean, definitely if you are someone who needs to schedule like that, again, that can definitely help you. For me, it's definitely more I find the little moments, or I'll just be like, you know what? I need to take this time to read. A full stop. This is the time that I need to take, and so I take it. If you need to take that time to read, do it. Take the time to do what you need.
Exactly. And like on the same vein as that, Aria, when she was in college, she never read for fun. Whereas for me, whenever I went to college, it started off being, this is what Aria did. So that's kind of what I did for my first year. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So I had to come home. And then once I finally went back to school, I learned that for me, I needed to be able to read, or else my mental health would suffer.
Right.
For Aria, if she did what I did, her grades would have probably suffered. If you are doing something like college, or, you're doing something in which you can't read, that's fine. You can always come back.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like I said, I had a years-long reading slump, like probably 3-4 years.
It was more like 5.
Something.
If you count your college, it was like 5 or 6.
Yeah, it was a very long time that I went on this reading slump. And even when I started to come out of it, like, it was still slump-ish because I wasn't reading a lot. Like, I was reading, like, kind of bare minimum, essentially. I think I kind of fell out of love with reading somehow, which I don't quite understand. But
I don't either.
I watched a lot of movies at that time. I watched a lot of TV shows. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. Like, all of those things are what I went to for entertainment more so. And I think maybe my brain also might have just needed a bit of a break and to kind of explore some of the other things out there. And then to be like, okay, I can, go back to reading and that kind of thing. So it just kind of depends. And I mean, if you're in the middle of a reading slump, if you're going through a reading slump, it's okay. You will get through it. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle with yourself, because if you can read 300 books in a year, I tip my cap to you. I know that I'm not that person.
I used to be that person.
Well, I used to be that person when I was young and had no responsibilities.
I was that person in high school.
Yes.
Because I would read like a book a day.
Yes. So like, if you're able to do that, then, again, I tip my cap to you. For me, when it comes to setting a reading goal, for this past year, I set 120 books as my reading goal. And I far surpassed that number just from all of the reading that I was able to do. So I kind of set up my goal that if I read 10 books a month, I'm doing good. And for me, I feel like that's a good goal to set. I feel like for me, that is something that's achievable. For other people, it might not be. But you just kind of have to do what feels right for you.
And for me, I'm a person who I don't set reading goals. That's not something I personally do.
But normally I don't.
Well,
like this past year was the first time.
Yes, this is this past year was the first time you've set a reading goal. But you know me, and everything needs to be done boom, boom, boom.
Right.
So like, I wouldn't be able to pace myself if I set a reading goal.
Right. And that's the other thing. Like, if a reading goal is something that helps you to read,
then by all means go and set one.
But don't feel like, I know a lot of times I look on like Bookstagram and BookTube and, all of those guys are like, this is my reading goal for the year. And I'm like, that's good and all, but like, it might not work for this other person over here. They might set a reading goal and like Belle, they would burn themselves out trying to meet their reading goal in January. Or for somebody else, they might be like, oh, I set this reading goal, but all of these things happened and I just wasn't able to read. And like, I tried really hard. And then they feel really bad about themselves because they couldn't meet that goal.
Yeah, exactly. So
like, if you can set a goal and not get upset if something happens and you can't meet it or match it, or if, like Belle, you're just like, if I try to do that, I will burn myself out. Don't do it. Like, you don't have to have a goal, a reading goal, to be a reader, to be a fulfilled reader. I mean, heck, if you just want to sit and read fan fictions all day, like, by all means,
or like we've said in a previous episode, for me, it worked for me in college that I would read completed books on Wattpad.
And Wattpad has some good stuff,
It does.
As we've said before, we even have stuff on Wattpad,
So you do have to find what works for you.
Yes. And it's kind of like Cinderella's slipper in the fact that you're not going to find that thing that works overnight.
No. It's a lot of trial and error.
It's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of, okay, this worked for me, this didn't.
You also just kind of got to know what type of person you are. Like, if you're a person who can set a goal and work with that goal, or if you're a person who knows they can't do that. If you're a person that knows that they can work by a schedule and, schedule time for themselves, that's fine. But if you're not, that's fine too.
Right, exactly. So I will say, though, that, for those of you who are going to set a reading goal for next year, I'm setting mine at 120 again. So,
I am not setting one.
Yeah. So if you are setting one, let us know. All right. Well,
we do have an announcement.
Yes, we do. So, like Belle said, she is graduating today from school.
Walked across the stage, man. Got that diploma.
Yes.
Woot.
So, but also something to note. The holidays are coming up. Both Christmas and New Year's Day are on Sundays this year. And so because of that, we're not going to be posting new episodes. Belle is done with school. We're going to be taking a trip.
We're taking a nice family vacation in order to celebrate as a family being together, Aria, me, and our parents, to celebrate
everything.
So we're not going to be here.
Yeah. So what is going to be happening for the next 2 weeks is I'm just going to be posting some bonus episodes. But we will be back after the 1st, the next Sunday after the 1st, we will be back and we will kind of resume normal episodes. So that announcement kind of does it for today to close us out. We want to thank you for listening throughout the year and, just listening to us in general. If you like this episode, if you enjoy listening to us banter, please consider sharing the episode with your friends. It really does help us to grow the show, and we would appreciate it. If you don't want to, hey, that's fine too, but it would help us out and we would appreciate it. And Absolutely. Then we will see you guys in the new year then. Bye.
Bye.